Oh, it's definitely getting colder in the UK. The winter's setting in, and yeah, so the big fleeces, jackets, jumpers are all coming out. The studio is generally quite a cold place, but I do think I might need to invest in a few more because I seem to look quite similar in almost every video that I'm sort of doing. But I released a movie last week. Have you seen it? If you haven't seen it, I think it's about time you did see it. But I thought I would do a quick little behind the scenes on how I made a film all by myself. So if you are interested, welcome to the video and grab yourself a drink. Stick around. Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another video here at Benham Media. My name is Nathan and it's an absolute pleasure to have all of you here. Thank you so much for clicking on this thumbnail. It does mean a lot to me. So, I have taken the adventure. I started off as an actor. If you have followed me for a while, you should already know this. And I've progressed into photography, which is a newfound love. But of course, I have constantly strived to do more film work and be more of an actor as well. And the whole point of me starting Benham Media was to try to make projects that I could do myself and then try to expand on that experience. And you know, over the last 3 or 4 years, it has segued into other media forms like photography. My film, which I released on this channel last year, has received some really nice feedback. And guys, thank you so much for all of your kind words. It has meant a lot to me and has given me the sort of fuel and fire to carry on creating. And if you haven't yet seen it, please take the opportunity. I will leave a link at the end of this video for you to watch it. And yeah, I just thought I would do a quick little video like this, a behind the scenes type thing to let any budding filmmaker, actor out there know that you don't need the big set cast crew to start creating. You can do it by yourself. Now, Unhealthy Addiction was just an idea that I had sat at home trying to think of how I can create potentially a monologue into a sort of an existing movie. And I wanted to obviously have a decent story, have a bit of a twist, everything going along those lines. So Unhealthy Addiction sort of came from that. I'm not going to ruin it too much of the plot for you, just in case you haven't seen it and you do want to watch it after watching this video. But of course, one of the biggest challenges that I had was how am I going to do it with just me? Now, I am lucky enough to have this wonderful space at the end of my garden. It is a double garage, but I use it as a photography studio, as my studio to make these YouTube videos. In a way, it's really good because it gives me the space that I need to sort of get away from the hustle and bustle of family life. Also means I don't need to tell my family to be quiet. They can be as loud as they want watching TV while I am in here working. So I decided to try to base the film around this location, and a couple more ideas that I have are sort of based within this sort of like scenario. It's safe, it means I'm in control of my own environment, and as I usually do, I stick my camera on a tripod and I try to talk to you guys without potentially it being taken by anybody. But yeah, let's not beat around the bush. Let's start discussing how I started to create this particular film with what I have and try not to make it look too complicated. Now, one of the first things I had to do is that I had to create my performance space. And like I said, I use this particular garage shed stroke studio as my main base of operations. I do all my YouTube videos, and quite generally once I've stopped filming, I leave it as it is and I clean up as I go, so it's in a bit of a state. But because it is a garage, my children do use it to store all of their outside toys. It's a place where we store spare food because we've got a fridge in here, and it's a place where we just sort of store the things that we can't necessarily store within the house. So it did need a big bit of tidying, which is one of the first things I had to do to make sure that I had the space that I needed to shoot the film that I wanted to shoot, which of course is my short film and the whole point of doing it in the first place. So yeah, so that was the first things first, create a good working environment for me to shoot my movie. Next up was this big huge window that I have just back here. This window has been a thorn in my side in a few videos Definitely the fact that the sun shines from over my house into that window, so quite often the light changes as and when the sun comes out. I had this big problem when I shot my 100th video, is that I tried doing a very clever multi-screen thing, but between me changing from one character to another, the sun came out and the exposure was different for the both. I tried my best to make a good of a bad thing. It's not one of the best videos that I've ever made, but I posted it anyway. But I needed to find a way of blocking this big, huge window just up here. Now, ideally, I would like shutters on these windows so I can completely black them out, but I don't have that sort of to my exposure at the moment. But I am extremely lucky enough that I have a wife who is addicted to Amazon, and I have an entire shed load, literally, of empty boxes just stacked up here because the recycle men don't necessarily like to take them away, and they've just sort of piled just up here. So I went over to these boxes, I had a bit of a look around, and once I found the ones that I wanted, I cut them up into the sizes that I needed, and I began to gaffer tape them over the windows. Now this took a little bit longer than I first anticipated. It was quite a big window. The wall itself is quite brittle, so the gaffer tape took some time to make sure it stuck to the particular wall, and then I had to plug up any sort of little gaps that were sort of shining light through. Now the reason why I wanted this is because quite clearly I wanted the light to be consistent throughout the film, that I didn't want any sort of unnecessary light leaks coming through the actual window itself, and then also the exposure is all over the place. It was mainly a way of trying to have less sort of energy and work to do in post-production, trying to match the different exposures, that I could just use my 2 studio lights to light the scene, and there's no external light coming through the window that I had to sort of like change where, you know, potentially with the aperture or the shutter speed or the ISO or anything like that to try to sort of match it up. And yeah, it was quite a bit of a success, because once I sort of turned the light off, it got pretty dark in here. And there is another window just here as well, which I actually do have temporarily blacked off, because obviously this is where I sit to make the majority of my talking head videos. But there's a bit of wood up there which I use, but I did also use a bit more cardboard to try to fill in the gaps there as well, to make sure that I'm in complete control of the lighting situation within my working space. So after I've done all that, I then had to do a bit of a cleanup. Like I said, generally after I've done a photo shoot or I've made my sort of videos, I generally leave this as it is. So there is literally crap all over the floor. There are broken bits of cardboard which I've used as props or backdrops. There's even at the moment still parts of the sort of confetti that I used for my New Year's Eve one, which was, you know, it's November now, so that was like 11 months ago that I sort of went Happy New Year, and they are still scattered all over the floor. So I had to sort of do a bit of a tidy up, a bit of a clean up. Now, during the summer, Fee did in fact use this place as a bit of a gardening greenhouse effect. So all the stuff just sort of down here, which you've probably seen in previous videos, they were sort of filled with plants and all sorts of things like that. But over the sort of towards the end of the summer, they've all sort of died, and they've now become a sort of a thriving habitat for arachnids and any type of creepy crawly, which I'm not overly squeamish, but every now and then when one crawls over my hand, it does take me back a little bit, and I turn into a 9-year-old girl, and yeah, I squealed a little bit. I'm not ashamed to admit that, it does happen. But after I've got all that sorted and I'm extremely happy with my working space, it is now time to set up the audio side and also the lights and get everything prepped and set ready for shooting. So one of the things that I was particularly focused on is making sure the audio was as best as I could sort of make it within this film. As I have learned over my years of YouTube, audio is extremely important when it comes to video making. You could potentially have a really bad quality video, but if the audio is spot on, then people seem to be sort of okay with it. But if the audio is quite crap, and I have been guilty of this in the past, people seem to sort of switch off a little bit. So I wanted a nice, consistent audio throughout my film, which also again made it easier because I was going to do different clips from different angles to try to make sure that the audio was nice and balanced throughout the film, and it gave me less work that I had to do within the post-production side of it. Now, if you're on a film set, you have a guy with a big long stick. He's a sound man, that's a boom mic, and they will generally hold the microphone quite as close as they can without it being in shot, and as you move, they would potentially move with you. Of course, I did not have this privilege, so I came up with a plan B. Just behind me here, this is my back screen. I generally use it when I make my self-tape videos for my agent. That's what the screen is there. I was actually shooting one this afternoon, so hopefully, fingers crossed, I get that part. So I decided to stick my boom mic to the top of this screen. So I took the actual screen off, folded it up, put it away nicely, and then I positioned the chair where I was planning to sit throughout the film, and then I tried to sort of angle the actual frame of it itself and attach the boom mic to the top of the rail, and then make sure the microphone was in a consistent level. Because I spent the majority of this film sat down, I knew that the microphone can stay there, and that way I should always have a similar distance away from the microphone to keep the audio constantly going. The cool thing about this particular boom mic setup that I had, it came with a really long cord, so I could still plug my Rogue mic, which I generally have on top of my camera, plug that in to the long cord, which then I could take it into my camera and I could record audio straight into the file on my camera. Once all that was set up and I was satisfied, I took my camera and I did a few little test shots just to make sure that the microphone is quite close to my mouth, but also not going to appear in any of the shots that I was planning to shoot. And I moved my camera around a little bit and just double checked to make sure in my screen that you couldn't see the microphone sort of peeking in, which again would have ruined the shot. And yeah, and then next thing I just had to sort of tidy up my maintenance a little bit, making sure there was no dangling wires or anything like that, and sort of stuck it to the ceiling. And it got a little bit fiddly as I was moving my camera around, because then I had to move the wires around a little bit. But yeah, I was quite pleased with my setup overall, as you can see by this quite crude little bit of filmmaking of me just sort of showing my overall setup for the particular film before I started shooting. And that was pretty much it. That was the setup for the one-man crew stroke acting talent short film for Unhealthy Addiction. Now, I did have a bit of a cheat when it also came to reading my lines. I seem to have got away with it after watching the film back, but because I knew that I wanted to get the lines spot on, even though much of them were on top of my head, one of the things that I learned very earlier on in my acting career when I moved from stage to screen is that the way that you shoot particular scenes. So instead what I ended up doing is that I attached my lines to the top of the table, which I have generally just back here, and that way I could have a eye line, which I could always have, which of course I was supposed to be talking to somebody else on set, and that way I could also make sure my lines were perfect with each and every take, which again helped when I was sort of stitching it together with the different shots. Also, as an actor, I had to keep in mind as well of different movements that I made for particular cuts that I wanted. For example, if I was tilting my head this way, I had to make sure I did it as well at the same time. And also, there was one point where I put my hands to my mouth, which I sort of messed up, but I managed to stitch it together quite well, so you didn't quite notice. Overall, I am extremely happy of how this film came out. Technically, it is the second movie that I've actually made. I did make one when I first got my camera and I really was, right, I am going to be a filmmaker, watch out worlds. And I did pull it into focus, which basically focused on a sort of like a date, and it starred Phoenix, which is my wife, and it was more of a glorified music video, if I'm completely honest. This was a very first type of proper film, if you want to call it, that I've even attempted, and it did. It came out quite well. Again, I've had some wonderful comments from you wonderful people, and I hope you look forward to the next project, which is currently brewing up here. But guys, that is it. That is all I need to tell you for today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider giving it a thumbs up just down there. It literally costs you nothing. but it means the world to me, and it makes this video go further up the YouTube algorithm. And if you haven't already, and you are liking what you see on this channel, and you've seen me once, twice, maybe 3 times, please consider subscribing to the channel and stay up to date with everything that I want to do via Benham Media. But guys, if you are a budding filmmaker, if you are a want-to-be actor but you can't get yourself out there, there are many, many ways that you can start creating your own stuff. Yeah, it's not going to get seen by Hollywood's greats, but it might get seen by enough people, and eventually you might start getting a bit of a ball rolling till one day someone goes, hey, didn't you do that thing? That was really, really good. Can we sort of like do this? Which is my main aim. So I'm going to give that out to you. If you are in fact a budding filmmaker, writer, actor, do get in touch. This is my Instagram just here. Give me a message and I would like to see if we can start collabing together and start making more and more things. And of course, the more successful we can make everything, the better everybody becomes. But I hope you find yourself well. I hope everyone's happy. I hope you are enjoying the sort of like the cold autumn months if you are in, of course, the northern hemisphere. Obviously, if you're down south, it gets a little bit warmer this time of year. But yeah, it is hot chocolate season, and I'm gonna go and have myself now sort of maybe 1 or 2. But yeah, guys, like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you fancy it. I will see you over on Instagram if you do feel the need. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!